The Fed is recapitalizing the banks. There's not enough, believe it or not, despite the trillions of dollars that are floating around, there's not enough, believe it or not. Why? Because the system demands a relentless, unstoppable acquisition of debt on an unprecedented scale, just to keep the illusion real where we are. Can't stop. Once we stop, what do we get? We get Mad Max. Everything stops. We get a credit freeze, and then a credit freeze is one of the reasons why the Federal Reserve is involved in this repo scam. The big banks, the mega banks, they're absorbing every single smaller institution they possibly can. They are becoming financial monsters themselves, way too big to fail. Whatever happened to that, right? So these institutions are, again, they're consolidating enormous power. Why? Because they know it's coming down the pike. So they're getting ready for it. While the people sit here and they just let it happen to them. They are sheep. They are sheep being marched into a furnace. And they're all, most of them, sadly, are in a lot of trouble. People don't know that the United States military is the enforcement arm of the Federal Reserve. As a matter of fact, people also don't understand that the petrodollar only exists because the U.S. military is mandated to protect the oil of OPEC nations, for which OPEC nations have accounts, all of them, with the Federal Reserve. This is stuff that anyone can look up. As a matter of fact, we had President Trump recently threaten to pull Iran, pull their account from the Federal Reserve. Anyone think that's kind of odd? Nobody out here, not me, or anyone I can think about, is smart enough to know what the actual cost of debt would be. The debt suppression cycle that we are in and the debt expansion, I mean, we're suppressing rates and we're expanding the debt at the same time, is unprecedented. It's unbelievable. It's literally unbelievable, but that's what's going on here. No one is smart enough to know the true value of debt at this point. That can never be paid back. It's never meant to be paid back, and it never will be paid back. It's the mechanism of the system. It's how it works. The debt market is the main driving force behind asset prices. If the debt is in a bubble that we can't even believe, how can we have a true value on anything? The stock market itself, despite the companies themselves, which do have value, is a derivative of the freaking debt market. So if the debt market is not real, how could the price of a single stock be real? I hope people are trying to get what I'm saying. This is an environment that is truly epic.
Welcome back to Finance and Liberty and Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest who is always incredibly popular with our viewers. You know him as the Robin Hood of Wall Street. Gregory Mannarino is also the founder of TradersChoice.net. Greg, thanks for joining us again here on Reluctant Preppers and Finance and Liberty.
It's great to be back. Glad to see you. And as we were just talking about pre-video, I don't do video interviews anymore, any interviews for that matter, but I like you. So, not that I don't like everybody else, but it became too overwhelming for me in my own work. So I'm glad to be here. This is the first interview I've done. I don't even know how long it's been. And trust me on this, it's going to be a very rare occasion moving forward. But anyway, thanks for having me.
We take it as a special gift and appreciate it. And we'll try to spread the love around because we've got so many questions that have been asked by our viewers. We'll try to hit a lot of high points, and I think that that'll spread the benefit to a lot of different people. I want to mention to everyone today is Monday, January 20th, 2020. 2020. Wow, that's a lot of 20s. So, Hey, we've got a question here from Max Power 2013 who says, please ask Greg, since the Fed is printing billions of dollars, how is it that the U.S. dollar is still so strong? With this many bills in circulation, shouldn't the value of the dollar be falling through the floor?
Well, there's a few reasons for this. I guess the most obvious one would be the dollar is still thought of as a safe haven, and if when you're comparing the value of the dollar, you look at it relative to other currencies. Now, the issue with, and I think this is where this person is going is, why are we not seeing massive amounts of inflation? And the answer to that is extremely simple as well. We have historic lows with regard to the velocity of money, the rate at which cash is moving through our economy. Now, there is going to become a point where, and I've been saying this forever, that velocity is going to pick up for whatever reason. Personally, I think it's going to be as people start to dump debt. But again, if cash isn't moving, it's not chasing the same amount of goods, okay? And again, I think this is what that individual is alluding to here. So until that moment, again, we have trillions of dollars just floating around out there. At one point, in my view, and I've been saying this since time immemorial, they're going to chase the same amount of goods. But right now, because our economy is in free fall, we have large sectors of our economy that are melting down. You don't hear about it because again, everything's supposed to be booming. We have a global economy which is slowing down along with it. We're not immune. And until something happens to cause cash to start moving, and it will at one particular point, there's no way to stop it. We're going to experience this kind of a scenario where we have all these extra bills, but they're not moving. If they're not moving yet, you're not going to see crazy inflation. But I don't think there's a possible way to prevent it from happening because, as we all know, the Fed is gone hyper-nuclear supernova. They're buying all of the debt, all of it, from the extreme short end of the yield curve to the long end of the yield curve. They're buying stocks. I have no doubt about that. They're actually going to be giving cash to hedge funds to buy debt. This is something they're talking about here. It's an incredible situation we're in. But I think we all know where this is going in the end. But for now, we're in this kind of a flux. So again, it gives us all a chance to prepare for what's coming, understand what's coming. And in many ways, this is a natural selection we've been witnessing for a long time. Certain people are going to be able to understand what's happening. Most people will not. Unfortunately, most people are going to suffer on an epic scale when this all balances out or becomes corrects to a fair value. It's going to be horrible for people. I hate to think about it, but again, this is nothing new. We've seen this over and over repeatedly. However, we've never been in an environment like this. We've never had, ever, distortions like this across the spectrum of financial markets. And it's all stemming from where? From the debt market. This is world central banks who have gone absolutely crazy in an attempt to fulfill their final solution. What is their final solution? It's very simple: to issue more debt. And that this has been something that's been in the works for decades. When you have world leaders calling for lower rates and more debt, negative rates, this is a central banker's dream come true. This is what they want. This is how they manifest their grand plan, which is to be the lenders and buyers of last resort, to create legions of nation debt slaves and individual debt slaves on a grand scale. And this is what we have. We are quickly moving towards a two-tier society. It should be very obvious to people, but a lot of people are still in the dark. And it's very sad. For me, as a guy, I think, who understands these markets probably to a level that most people don't. Mm-hmm. And that's because this is all I do. Around the clock, I study them. I'm in them constantly. It's my cash at work. It's my reputation on the line here. So I think I got it. And again, people need to be very careful at what they're seeing. It's not real. The environment is completely fake.
The next question follows right off of what you were just saying. Alan Ewert says, normally we would expect the markets to crash after a yield curve inversion and a spike in bond yields. But the fake markets, as the Fed has created through supporting the repo markets and, quote, not QE, seem to be completely immune to fundamentals in the economy, technicals, as well as pretty much anything else, including bond yields now. In light of this, what do you see as the trigger that might cause the markets to finally crash?
Well, it's the same as it's always ever been. It's never going to stop, and we're witnessing it now. So, again, great question. We have the Federal Reserve buying the entire yield curve from the extreme short end to the long end. If the Federal Reserve were not involved, I call it a repo scam. It's a scam for two reasons why they're doing this repo operation. Number one is to pin down the short end of the yield curve, to prevent the curve from inverting again. The second is to give the illusion of liquidity in the markets. We're drying up. This is why the Fed needs to continue to flood this market with more debt. Every bill that they add to a digital screen is a unit of debt. These are unbacked liabilities being dispersed by a bankrupt government being run by their central bank, period. So this whole, again, going back to what I was saying in my big rant a minute ago, we've never seen this before. There's nothing like it to compare it to. And the rigging of the debt market, in my view, and I've been calling this very, very accurately as of late, is going to get much worse. We haven't seen anything yet with regard to the epic debt expansion cycle that we are in. We have never seen a debt expansion cycle like the one we are in history. This eclipses the one that we saw during the last meltdown by exponents. But a lot of this is going on behind the scenes. You know, most people don't even realize that 6 months ago, we bailed out the banks again. Yes, the public bailed out the banks yet again. We were told by Fed President Bullard that this was going to happen. The banks were going to need to be recapitalized. I explained to people that this was going to happen before he opened his big mouth, and that's exactly what happened. The Fed is recapitalizing the banks. There's not enough, believe it or not, despite the trillions of dollars that are floating around, there's not enough, believe it or not. Why? Because the system demands a relentless, unstoppable acquisition of debt on an unprecedented scale just to keep the illusion real where we are. Can't stop. Once we stop, what do we get? We get Mad Max. Everything stops. We get a credit freeze, and then a credit freeze is one of the reasons why the Federal Reserve is involved in this repo scam, passing cash between one bank to another overnight, back and forth, giving the illusion of liquidity, forcing that short end of the yield curve down. Again, when this started, I explained to people on my blog that this was a mechanism to force cash into the stock market. My God, that's exactly what's going on, and is going to continue. The disconnect between the economy and the market is going to get greater and greater and greater until at one point they are going to meet. They're going to meet somewhere in the middle, and it's going to be devastating for people. Again, this is nothing new. This is not this is something conjured out of thin air. No, we've seen this over and over again. The bought and paid for government that we have being run by our central bank, they are serial bubble blowers. This is all they do. They inflate bubbles, they deflate bubbles. They inflate bubbles, they deflate bubbles. It's a cycle just to transfer wealth from the masses right up the chain to the 1%ers. It'll never change. It never will. But again, I think your listeners, your followers are smart enough to understand that what they're seeing here is, I almost hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. It's opportunity for people to get themselves in the right spots now. Don't wait until it's too late. People who have been watching your show, I am certain of it, are ready for the most part. They know what's going on here. They're able to comprehend the environment. My followers, same thing. But unfortunately, there's throngs of people out here that are being so misled, not just by the mainstream media, but I'm going to hate to say this too, but by people right here on YouTube, the alternative media, who are now bought and paid for. And again, I don't want to get too far into it, but it's just a terrible thing for me to see.
I wanted to press in on a couple points you made. One, let's talk about what happens when you have this falling purchasing power of the dollar, and this, because as the currency gets debased through this money printing and debt ballooning that you're talking about, one of the things that people are running into is this apparent capital gains they have to pay taxes on just because their stocks apparently went up, or their house apparently went up, or their whatever they had apparently went up, when actually that they can feel in their daily lives that they're barely treading water, and they're, in some areas they're falling behind just trying to keep up with ordinary costs. And this is a follow-up question from Alan Ewart again. It says, surely if a fiat paper currency is ultimately heading to zero, the markets are priced in USDs, which means technically the markets will just keep going up and never crash, or am I missing something?
No, no, no. That's a really, really good point. If you base these asset values in U.S. dollars, well, then that's the perspective. But here's my take on this. And again, this is something we've probably been spoken about this in the past. The current fiat monetary system has more or less run its course. And how do we know that's true? Well, we can see the desperation of central banks and their respective governments, although it's the opposite way. It's the central banks that are the governments now. The corporations run the show. It's the military-industrial complex. It's the banks. What they're eventually going to do here is need to issue in a new system, something else. But you have to understand, it's going to be one to benefit them, not us. It will remain debt-based. The power of central banks rests in one thing, their ability to issue their product. They have one product, and that is debt. We can sit here and talk about what the Fed might do, is going to do, what these other world central, but all they're going to do is issue more debt. I don't care what they say. That's it. People believe that. I mean, really, what do people think is the product of every single world central bank? It's debt. That's it. And their end game is to issue more of it until the absolute last moment. When this thing around us begins to correct to fair value, people are going to beg for a new system. They're going to beg for help. This is what they're going to do. And then what's going to happen is the central banks, the government, is going to say, hey, we have a solution for you. You can either let everything go to zero and lose everything you've ever worked for in your life, or you can accept this. And of course, people are going to go, thank you, thank you. But sadly, this is what most people are going to fall into. They don't understand that they should be looking into dollar alternatives. Yeah, sure, like we were just talking about. Dollar devaluation is coming. The dollar is stronger now for the reasons that we spoke about. But with all the calls for a weaker dollar, with all the calls for negative rates here in the United States, and we already have negative rates. I mean, people who have an interest earning account here in the United States, they're earning in the negative because the rate of inflation is actually obviously higher than what people are getting paid. I mean, it's insane. It's an upside down system that we have. But again, I think what we're touching on here, at least I would believe, most people who are listening to this already have a handle on it. And maybe they need to hear it again, but this is where we're going. There's no doubt about it.
A related question from when the charade can be revealed. Busy Mountain asks, please ask Gregory if revealing to the public the serious economic problems would likely cause panic among the populace, and then who would then be angry at the president for painting a rosy-colored picture of the economy and keeping people calm?
It's always the same. Look here, don't look here. They have to keep the public controlled, and they will do this. The control mechanisms have been in place since the beginning of time. This is how the few have controlled the masses forever, and it will continue to go that way. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone with the guts to tell people what they really need to do. And it's very sad. What we need, and not just here in the United States, around the world, are leaders that are going to level with the people. I sincerely believe that if the people were presented with a real, what the facts may be, people would say, hold on a minute, maybe I shouldn't be buying another home. Maybe I shouldn't be getting myself more into debt. Maybe I should work on other things, and maybe collectively we could come up with a solution, but there is no solution. The solution is very simple. Keep people distracted. Have them look here when they should be looking here. Tell everyone that our economy is booming and the best that it's ever been. They will believe it. And not only will they believe it, the greater the lies become, the more people are going to believe it. This is also another paradigm that has existed since time immemorial. So we'll never get the truth from anyone now, because the agenda is here. We're there, and there's no stopping what's coming at this particular point, especially with the current leadership, not just here in the United States and around the world. And to me, It does not matter whatsoever, whosoever, itsoever would sit in the pretty White House, whether it's a Republican, a Democrat. These are two cults that are deliberately put forth to keep the people divided, to keep them angry. This is another control mechanism, divide and conquer. And if you just, people, again, they have no conception at all about the game that is being played on them on an epic scale. They're unable to snap out of it. They don't realize the most basic premise that this world is not run by presidents, kings, queens, monarchs, or dictators. The world is run by the banks, run by the banks. Henceforth, why we have our president last week telling people the banks are doing phenomenal, windfall profits. I'm telling people to take advantage of it. I'm telling people to buy the banks right now because they're going up. There's no doubt about it. And not only that, I want to tell people what else is going on under their nose. So maybe they should do their own research on this. But the big banks, the mega banks, they're absorbing every single smaller institution they possibly can. They are becoming financial monsters themselves, way too big to fail, whatever happened to that, right? So these institutions are, again, they're consolidating enormous power. Why? Because they know it's coming down the pike. So they're getting ready for it. While the people sit here and they just let it happen to them. They are sheep. They are sheep being marched into a furnace. And they're all, most of them, sadly, are in a lot of trouble.
Well, we're going to talk about what people can do about it in just a few minutes here. We have a question from Barbara Herds who says, question for Greg, if Greg were president, and maybe you're going to tell me that's not good enough, you'd have to be something a lot higher up the control chain than president. What exactly would he do to change the financial system for the better? Meaning, if Greg had complete control and could do whatever he deemed necessary. I know you've spelled this out in the past, but recap it for people.
Well, it's pretty simple. What I'm about to say would probably get a bullet in my head if I were president in the blink of an eye. But we need to break free from the debt-based economic model. We need a wealth-based system, and inflating the debt, like we're doing right now, like we have never seen before, is only going to exacerbate the problem. We cannot have, and I know there's a lot of people who believe this, some kind of a debt jubilee, because again, the bills that are in your pocket are units of debt. You don't even own them. I know you're well aware of this, but most people, when I tell people that the bills in their pocket that they think they're having in their bank account, which do not exist because of the fractional reserve system, when I tell people you don't own those bills, well, I tell them to look at it. It's a Federal Reserve note. This note is owned by the issuing central bank and owed back to the issuing central bank, plus interest that they create out of thin air. This is their product. It's debt. To fix the system, the issue is so monumental, I can't even stress to you how monumental it is, because what we have witnessed because of the debt-based economic model is a population boom. We've watched the debt go up like a hockey stick. Right behind it, we got the population. Okay? What's going to happen when the debt bubble bursts? Do people think that the population is going to remain static or even go up? We're going to get a complete meltdown here on a biblical scale. There's going to be loss of life on a biblical scale. And this is also part of the control mechanism. I think many people realize this as well. They want a smaller population on a global scale. They're going to get it too, through any mechanism that they can, because the central banks will never, ever give up what they have achieved. We have killed hundreds of millions of people to establish the petrodollar system, to establish the debt-based economic model, and it will not stop. There's no way to stop it at this point here. What people don't understand, too, going even a little deeper than that, me being prior military, I was a lieutenant in the United States Navy, people don't know that the United States military is the enforcement arm of the Federal Reserve. As a matter of fact, people also don't understand that the petrodollar only exists because the U.S. military is mandated to protect the oil of OPEC nations, for which OPEC nations have accounts, all of them, with the Federal Reserve. This is stuff that anyone can look up. As a matter of fact, we had President Trump recently threaten to pull Iran, pull their account from the Federal Reserve. Anyone think that's kind of odd? This should show people that what I am explaining to them is 100% true. The banks have a stranglehold on every single life on this planet, and they will do what they want, when they want, with them. There's not enough of us. There's not enough, and I have begged, I have pleaded, I have done everything I possibly can think about to try to get more people on my channel, and I hope more people subscribe to yours. There's too few of us to make any difference. They will squash us like bugs. We're worthless to them. We grease the wheels of the military-industrial complex, this machine, with our blood and our guts every single day. We have people here in our country struggling to make ends meet. 1 in 5 is borrowing from their credit cards to make ends meet. People here in the United States are in more debt today than they have ever been in history. Personal debt and household debt is skyrocketing. The debt is ballooning. I put up a chart this morning right on my Steam It page. You can go to my Facebook page or tweet it. You can see my Twitter feed what the Federal Reserve has done just over the last 3 months. It has gone parabolic, and it's not going to stop. This stuff is hidden. Where? In plain sight. I want people to start paying attention, to listen to shows like yours, to listen to guys like me, so they can gain a perspective on what's going on and maybe what they can try to do about it. Because in the end here, look, I'm going to say this too. I have been out here for years, and I've been explaining to people that we are all responsible for each other. We're responsible for each other. I don't care if I don't know you and I never met you before. We have a responsibility to each other as human beings to come together, not to be separated and divided by the cults that are trying to do it. That they have a mission, a very dark, hideous, horrible mission that is being fulfilled right before our very eyes. If we had more people, we could start what we really do need. You know what we need? We need a revolution on an epic scale, on a global scale. That's what we need. Are we going to get one? No, we're not going to. And do you know why? Because the people have been deliberately lied to and dumbed down to the point where they can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. They've become slaves to the current system, and they can't break out. They're not even able, they can't even think their way out of it. Because again, what we're touching on here is above the pay grade of 90% of the people that are sitting outside my window right here. I can promise you that. When they hear this kind of stuff, they can't even comprehend it. It's impossible for them to do. It's like you trying to talk to a bug. I hate to say it, but that's the truth. It's the indoctrination. And that indoctrination continues today. Thank God, honestly, for shows like yours, really.
Well, that's why we have you on here, is giving us that alternate and independent viewpoint that people are not hearing about on the mainstream media for sure. They're not hearing about it from government sources. They're not hearing about it from any of the main authorities that really take center stage in people's lives and from which they normally would get information. So to help us stay on the internet here, being able to provide this kind of a venue for these amazing breakthrough guests like Greg, please help support us at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers. It makes all the difference in the world of us being able to not be dependent on the censorship that otherwise the mainstream platforms do impose, where things get under review and monetization revoked, but you can break us free from that through grassroots support. Greg, we wanted to, Bob Miller says, thanks for having Greg on. He certainly doesn't mince words. We all appreciate that. And he loves your mantra for each individual to bet against the debt and become your own central bank. Would like to know if Greg thinks the U.S. government will nationalize gold and silver, confiscate people's bullion, and so on. Or what, if you can spell out how people should act on that directive that you give them to become their own central bank. What does that mean to the ordinary person?
Well, to me, it's meant the same things, to hold hard assets. My favorite of all time is physical silver. I think most people who follow my work or know me Realize that. I'm going to say it here again. It's the most undervalued asset on the planet, period, the end. The price suppression mechanism that will continue is a godsend, in my opinion, right now, because there is going to be a moment when all this corrects to fair value. There's no doubt about it. Right now, it's extreme risk on. And meaning cash flowing into equities, the deliberate suppression of rates. Let me say this while I'm talking about rates. Nobody out here, not me or anyone I can think about, is smart enough to know what the actual cost of debt would be. The debt suppression cycle that we are in and the debt expansion, we're suppressing rates and we're expanding the debt at the same time, is unprecedented. It's unbelievable. It's literally unbelievable, but that's what's going on here. No one is smart enough to know the true value of debt. At this point, that can never be paid back. It's never meant to be paid back, and it never will be paid back. It's the mechanism of the system. It's how it works. Now that we understand that the only alternative, not only alternative, the goal of central banks is simple. None more so than the Federal Reserve. Why? Because the dollar remains the world reserve currency, is to issue more, and then even more than that. Beyond the ability, I think, of most people to believe. That's where we are at. And it's simple. It's to bring forth their final solution. Very simple. Be the lenders and buyers of last resort, to own everything. To create nation slaves, individual slaves on an epic scale. That's what they're doing. They have succeeded. Open your eyes. For everyone who's doubting what I am saying right now, tell me where I got this wrong. I think it's kind of impossible. With regard to them confiscating gold and silver, they never really confiscated any of it. They did pay people for it at the time when the people were being forced, whatever year that was. I don't remember. Maybe you do. But it's always a possibility that they can do anything. Again, they have the power to do anything. So, but I can't imagine another way, at least from a financial standpoint, to protect yourself from the current bubble, which is the mother of them all, the debt bubble. This is going to be hyperinflated. So if we know the debt bubble is going to be hyperinflated, makes our life pretty easy, right? You need to take the opposite side of that trade, and that means becoming your own central bank and betting against that debt. How do you do it? With a hard asset. It's very simple. It's very, very simple. I think people need to adopt that philosophy. I also, and I know I'm going to get heat for it, but I don't care. This is my opinion. And people can have whatever opinion they want, and that's fine. But do your own research. I believe here and now you should be looking for dollar alternatives, like we were just talking about. And I believe in cryptocurrencies as well. Certain cryptocurrencies out here, not all of them, the big ones, have value in this environment here. I don't think there's a guy out here, and you don't even know how much heat I had to take for this, who has called Bitcoin better than me. I explained to people they should start buying Bitcoin at 2,700. I told them again at 3,500. At 5,000, I told them it was going to 10,000. I told people to dump it at 18,000. I got laughed at. A lot of these cryptocurrency websites, Greg Mannarino is saying they should dump it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Really? I can't tell you how many of them, 3 of the big cryptocurrency websites out here wrote to me, Greg, I'm sorry. You were right, we were wrong. Because they were telling the people not to hold on to it. Do the opposite of what Greg Mannarino was saying. I nailed that to the freaking wall. When Bitcoin fell down low, I've been telling people to buy it again. Look, I'm not saying hold on to this stuff in perpetuity. I'm saying use it as a venue or an avenue to at least build some wealth. And you believe in other things like silver, which I believe is the best asset, most undervalued in the world. Pull the profits. Buy some silver with it. Use every avenue available to you to beat this market. It's not that hard. All you got to know basically is a few concepts. Number one, they are going to inflate beyond the ability for people to even comprehend. This is world central banks collectively. So we know that. We got to take the opposite side of that trade. We know we are in a risk-on environment like we have never seen before. Cash flowing into a hyper-inflated stock market. These valuations in this market cannot be justified from any way you want to look at it. Now, you got these talking heads on CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox Business. They try to justify it. But again, going back to what I was explaining, no one knows the value of debt. If we do not know the actual value of debt, how can we determine the actual value of anything? The debt market is the main driving force behind asset prices. If the debt is in a bubble that we can't even believe, how can we have a true value on anything? The stock market itself, despite the companies themselves, which do have value, is a derivative of the freaking debt market. So if the debt market is not real, how could the price of a single stock be real? I hope people are trying to get what I'm saying. This is an environment that is truly epic. And again, I think I've laid out a good case here, at least, for what people need to do. And maybe people should watch this video 2, 3, 4 times. I know a lot of the stuff I'm talking about may seem way out there and maybe is above certain people's pay grade. But if you listen to it a few times, you'll say, you know what? This makes sense to me. It should, at least.
I know our time is really short here. I just want to ask one more question. Stark Side of the Moon says, where does Robinhood plan on moving when the SHTF? Surely he must be considering getting out of the States soon with the way things are going. Much love.
You know, I'll tell you something. I'm not a guy that runs from anything. I'm a guy that will sit here and fight along with everybody else out here. And if you guys and girls are going down, I'm going down with you. Period. That's it.
Greg, we are delighted that you took the time to be with us again here. If people want to follow your work, where can they plug in?
Please, my website, traderschoice.net, it's just had a total redo. It's very simple to use.
Looks classy.
Yeah, thank you. I hope people utilize that resource. There's all kinds of free stuff there. Take advantage of it. And there's a killer chat room. It's also free. A lot of smart people there. I think people should take advantage of that too.
We've been speaking with Greg Mannarino, founder of TradersChoice.net and known as the Robin Hood of Wall Street. Greg, thanks for joining us again here on Finance and Liberty and Reluctant Preppers.
Great to be back. Thank you.
They say the stock market crashed today.
Yeah, I heard that.
Sounds like people's retirement accounts and savings accounts are going to get bailed into the banks.
Yeah.
Looks like pension plans and Social Security are going to get suspended too.
I know.
Sure, I'm glad we decided to put our money into gold and silver instead.
Me too.
Get your gold and silver and support this channel at goldsilver.com/AFF=RP. Reluctant Preppers provides educational awareness and commentary only. Opinions expressed do not constitute personalized financial advice. Viewers are encouraged to do their own research and seek qualified personal financial consultation before making investment decisions.